What's good, YouTube? It's Rico here, and so I went to the Dimension of Chaos sneak preview. That's the one that just is about to come out, and so I went there, got some of the new cards, and my friend and I, and also my roommate, put together a deck that we like to call Clown Bros, which is it's actually just like Performages. I mean, I guess you can call it Clown Blade, but it's not really like the Clown Blade combo is not really the focus of it anymore. It's just kind of just the Performages and a bunch of cards that just support the engine, especially with the new Pendulum cards. And obviously, it's based off of the M&M or Performages and Performance Battles deck that is completely wrecking the OCG right now. Not as good over here because we don't have Pendulum Sorcerer yet, but it's in testing, still pretty good. Definitely something I would say is worth looking into for the upcoming meta because holy shit, that ban list just fucking wrecked everything. Uh, yeah, just the metagame is going to be completely different now if anybody couldn't figure that out. Just everything relevant died, and then yeah. So yeah, this is just something that I personally have been working on for a while. My roommate got interested in the idea because he decided to sell Cosmo because he didn't feel like investing in the rest of the cards, and he already had Farm Worlds, so that was more money for him to put in his pocket. So he just bought like the entire Rank 4 engine, which got cheaper because they banned Exoton, and then he bought all the clown stuff. So yeah, and I don't really know what else to say. Let's get into it. So, oh, and I also got a new mat. I actually did not win this at the sneak preview. Two of my friends won the raffle for it, and they both already had other mats that they used. So one of them I just traded him or $15 worth of cards for it, and got the mat because it was due time for me to get a new one because the Ancient Prophecy one I have is like old as shit. So yeah. Yeah. So first off, the clowns are 3 juggler, 1 hat trick, or 1 trick clown. So this is the ratio that's running the OCG with the M&M deck, and that's because you don't really focus on the non-pendulum clowns anymore, except for damage juggler because he just searches everything else. So they don't really come up as often. Like I very rarely use hat tricker in this build. Trick clown, been messing around with either 1 or 2 copies of it. I think 1 honestly is probably fine just because you aren't focusing on it, and you can easily bring it back with instant fusion if it ends up stuck in the graveyard. So yeah, this ratio has been working well. And then 1,000 blades. We were originally playing Assault Halberd as well, 2 copies of it, and we ended up cutting it just because the spaces in this deck is kind of tight, and the Assault Halberds honestly felt like they were kind of superfluous just because they help with rank 4 plays, but when this engine gets going, it's like so explosive that you really don't need the extra level 4 monster that Thousand Blades gives, or that Assault Halberd gives you. So like you lose a way to search Thousand Blades out easier, but at the same time, like I said, this isn't like a focus of the deck anymore. It's just another option that it has. So I think just the 1,000 blades, even without the Assault Halberds, is fine. And then still run the Gigabyte engine of 3 GB, 1 Nefarious Archmeteor. And this is better now because there are more spellcasters to work with. Because most of the all the new Performage cards are also spellcasters. So you pretty much almost like still running the same amount of spellcasters that you do in the other build, like the regular Clown Blade build, because you cut down on the regular clowns, but then you added the pendulum clowns. So this engine is still good. And then a bunch of one-ofs, and they are Mathematician, Armageddon Knight, Shadow Dragon, Zephyrus the Elite, Breaker the Magical Warrior. So I will actually come back to these because they have to do with the pendulum cards. Well, yeah, for the most part, they all have to do with pendulum cards. So those are the regular monsters. For the pendulum monsters, there's 3 Rustler Pendulum, 3 Plush Fire. As everybody knows, this is the sacred combo. You get these together, you pop Plush Fire with Luster Pendulum, you add another Plush Fire to hand, you search off of the Plush Fire you destroyed, and you go nuts. And then 2 Mirror Conductor. We were playing around with 3 just because there aren't a lot of low scales in the TCG version of this deck because we don't have Pendulum Sorcerer. But honestly, even though there are so few low scales, they're all searchable. Because like we only run 3 low scales, but you can search all of them when you need them. So you don't really need to run that many, and then like it clogs if you run more. So yeah. And then the reason we don't really call this Performages and Pals yet, and we just call it Clown Bros, one, because that sounds kind of cool, in our opinion, is also because we only run 2 Performance Pals, and they're Lizard Draw and Part Naga. And this is because they're both reptiles, so you can search them with King of the Feral Imps, so you can search a low scale or a high scale depending on what you need. So, yeah. We originally weren't even running Lizard Draw, but I figured, and in practice I found that there are times where I actually do need a high scale, so it just helps to have the Lizard Draw on deck. So, going back to these guys, without Pendulum Sorcerer, the TCG version of this deck has a harder time destroying Plushfire, because Pendulum Sorcerer is really what makes the deck so insane. So I wanted ways to be able to pop it more reliably, but also have versatility, and that's where these guys come in. So Math and Armageddon Knight will both ditch Should All Dragon to the graveyard, and he can pop a Plushfire and go off. And if you used Armageddon Knight to do that, that's a free rank 4, because you just bring out a damage juggler, you make a rank 4, and you go off. And then if it was Math, you have to also have either Hat Tricker or Gigabyte or Nefarious Archmeteor to go off, but it's still possible. And then Breaker will just pop it by himself. So these will all really come in handy. On the off chance you draw Should All Dragon, it is a 1900 spellcaster, so you can do plays with it. It's not ideal to draw, obviously, but you can still do stuff with it. And Breaker is also a spellcaster, so you can use him, pop, bring out a damage juggler or whatever, and you can even drop Gigabyte, or you can just use that to make Trapeze Magician. So this little mini engine actually works really well for getting plays off with Plushfire, and obviously it's not as good as Pendulum Sorcerer, but it still has some utility to it. And then Zephyrus the Elite allows you to do more with Armageddon Knight than just dump Should All Dragon, because you can dump Zephyrus and then you can like bounce a Pendulum to your hand. That's a free level 4, and especially if you bounce Luster Pendulum, that puts it in your hand to Pendulum Summon itself onto the board. If you have another scale 5 in your hand, which you probably will because of Plushfire, so that gives you easier access to Ignis or Prominence, and it just like increases your rank 4 plays. And then Mathematician, obviously, you can send Archfiend Eater or Trick Clown or 1,000 Blades along with Should All Dragon. So there's just a lot of utility in this engine. And Breaker also just applies pressure by it forces your opponent to trigger a back row if they think you're gonna hit one of their own. So yeah, and that's the entire monster lineup. I don't remember how many monsters in there. I think it's like 24, 25, something like that. So spells. 3 Wavering Eyes, even though there aren't as many pendulums, because in the OCG they run upwards of like 17 to 20 pendulum monsters, which makes this card ridiculous. This version of the deck only runs 10, but it's still so important because it's a way to pop Plushfire, and it's also a way to get Luster Pendulum to your hand, which is extra important in this build, just because there's really Luster Pendulum is probably the most reliable way to pop Plushfire and just get plays going. So, and then this is also just really, really retarded in the mirror match, which I don't know how often that'll come up, but it's stupid. 3 Instant Fusion. So this still comes up just because there is still a large number of monsters that will hit the graveyard. Like, all of these monsters are non-pendulum, so they will hit the graveyard, and the only one that's not level 4 is Mathematician. So Instant Fusion will still usually be live, and it also just helps you extend a lot of your plays, or it's like things that would normally be clumpy just become better with Instant Fusion. And given the way the meta is looking, I wouldn't be surprised if Max C stops being a main deck card, just because like Cosmo and Infernoid are projected to be the big 2 decks, at least until we get Magician. And Maxi isn't particularly great against either of them, and even Maxi isn't even that great against Magician either, because most of their special summoning is inherent. So, like, but then Satellar Knight and Burning Abyss might still do stuff. I have my doubts on Burning Abyss, but I can see it still being a decent enough engine. And Satellar Knight wasn't hitting hard enough where people are going to stop using it. It's probably going to be the go-to for a lot of people. And So Maxi helps in those, and Maxi is pretty decent against this deck as well, because it's more useful than it is against regular Clan Blade, because regular Clan Blade is a very reactive deck, so it can play slow, and just like a lot of its summons are inherent. So if it sees you inherent summon, your opponent drops Maxi, you can just stop. This deck is a lot more aggro and explosive, and like it can play reactive, but it also excels at just being highly aggressive, and Maxi can stop that. So Maxi is also effective against this. So there are still decks where Maxi is effective, but majority of the decks, or at least the ones you'd be most likely to see, don't really get hurt by Maxi. So it makes Instant Fusion a lot safer because people probably aren't going to be maining it. And if they are, they probably won't be maining 3. And then the one-ons are Foolish, Raigeki, Rhoda. There are only 2 targets for Rhoda in the deck, which are Thousand Blades and Armageddon Knight. But even then, I still think that's enough to make this worth playing, because it just makes it easier. It's like, it lets you run 2 copies each of Armageddon Knight and Thousand Blades without actually running 2 copies of each, because both of them you only need once. This was put in when we were still running Assault Halberd, and then when we cut them, I decided that Rhoda was still worth playing, and so far it has proven to be still worth playing. And then for traps, Bottomless, Solemn, Torrential, Vanities, and 2 Time Space. So, my personal opinion, this card is nuts right now. Because, just, against Cosmo, it spins their ships back to the deck. It doesn't do anything against Infernoid, because they can just tribute their monster, and then it'll go back to the graveyard. Although, if you don't have any monsters in your graveyard, which, although you do still get monsters in your graveyard with this deck, it's not nearly as much as it used to be. So on the off chance they can just spin it back to the deck, but it's really not that good against Infernoid. But then it's useful against Magispector, it's useful against Burning Abyss, it's useful against Satellar Knight, provided they don't have Delteros on the board. So Time Space is like, oh, and it's fucking brutal against the Mirror Match. Like, Time Space is amazing right now. I was gonna originally get rid of one of the 2 copies I had, but the more I thought about it, I was like, wow, Time Space is actually really good, and I want to run 2 of them, because I just want to have it. So in this meta, Time Space is really good, and I think people should really consider playing it. Like, I wouldn't play 3, but 2's not bad. So yeah, that's the main deck. For extra deck, there is one card I'm missing, that's Majester Paladin. I wasn't able to get it at the sneak preview, and I'm going to wait until the set actually drops to get it, because it's currently like $17 to $20, and I think it's going to drop from that price. So it's just the demand for it's high right now because it's not mass released yet. But 2 came with Feral Lamps, so this guy's even better now because you can search Gigabyte or you can search Part Naga or Lizard Draw. So a lot of the times you're going to find yourself thinking, wow, I want to search again with King of the Feral Lamps. So playing 2 of them really, really helps with that. And then 1 Dweller, 1 Castel, 1 Emerald. He's actually not that good in this version of the deck, just because he's better late game when you've blown through your resources, but if you go off, there usually isn't a late game. Like, there usually isn't even a late game at all, because either you're going to grind until you get the stuff to go off, or your opponent's going to kill you. And that's just how this deck works. It's highly explosive. And it's like, it's not as consistent as regular Clown Blade, but it's still consistent enough to be usable. And it has a lot more aggro power to it. So Emerald doesn't really come up that much. He's probably going to be what I cut for when I get Majester Paladin. Dark Rebellion, Diamond Direwolf, Diamond Crab King. Still, even with Towers Turbo no longer being a thing, this guy is one of the best things to run over or crash with Cosmo ships, because if you get him in Dweller, you just kill any ship and then they can't float. Rhapsody and Berserk, Silent Honor Arc. Still think this guy's good. I've explained that in one of my Clown Blade videos before, that he's still worth running in my opinion. Trapeze Magician, Steel Swarm Roach. So this guy is amazing against Infernoid, obviously, because they inherent summon everything, and most of their monsters that are at least threatening are level 5 or higher. Now, they could bait it out with the 2-star that like bounces, but it's like, it still just threatens your opponent. So I think it's worth playing. And then when Magician comes out, Steel Swarm Roach, I found out by playing on Death Pro, actually, and just looking up the rulings, Steel Swarm Roach is actually different from T-King and Black Horn in that he can stop a pendulum summon of more than 1 level 5 or higher monsters. So this guy's going to be incredible against magicians, because I had a guy try to bait out my Steel Storm Roach by dropping 2 Magispector Unicorns on me, and it said, would you like to negate that? And I was like, I can actually do that, and then I did, and then he lost. So I think Roach is worth playing because of that. And then Willingness for Prominence. He's really good. He's a Scrap Dragon that doesn't target and doesn't destroy because he spins it back to the deck. He triggers your Plush Fires. The only downside for him is that you need Luster Pendulum to make him, and getting Luster Pendulum out onto the board isn't that easy unless you have more than one copy of him, or you have a way to bounce him back to your hand and you have another Pendulum. So very rarely do I ever find myself needing more than one. And then Toon Word. And side deck, work in progress, but like I said, the metagame I project, or predict, whatever words, would be Cosmo, Infernoid, Satellar Knight, potentially this, or Clownblade, Magispector, maybe Burning Abyss, just stuff like that. And then Magician when it comes out, obviously. I think Magician would actually surpass Cosmo as the best deck, in my opinion, because it has a good Cosmo matchup and it's a hell of a lot faster. So 2 Cyber Dragons for the Cosmo matchup, 2 Maxis for Satellar and Clownblade stuff, and just if Burning Abyss is still a deck, Burning Abyss. 3 MST, not entirely sold on this because you can pop stuff with Dragon and Breaker, which means by extension you can pop stuff with Armageddon Knight, Mathematician, and Rhoda. So I'm not entirely sure if the 3 MSTs are needed, but it's also like it's MST. So these might become something else, but I'm not sure yet. 2 Grand Hornet Heavens. So this card is pretty good. Before the set dropped, these were Blackhorns, because I was going to play Blackhorn in regular Clownblade to deal with Infernoid. So Grand Horn is great because it stops Pendulum Summons, and because it also ends their main phase, so it forces them into a battle phase. So they can still do stuff main phase 2, but they can't like actually attack, which is really good, because it's effectively like you're forcing them to slow down their game. Like they get a draw out of it, but making them effectively skip their battle phase if they don't have a monster on board is incredible. And if they do it in main phase 2, you force them to end their turn, which is also really good. And so like this goes in against Infernoid, Magispector, the Mirror. It will go in against Magician. It would go in against the Satellar Knight because it would kill Delteros and Trevere if they don't have Delteros on board. So yeah, Grand Horn's really good. I was considering signing 3, but I feel like it's not something I want to see in multiples, which is the same with just like anything that stops usually a single summon. Yeah, 3 Iron Wall, card is godlike, 2 Decree, and Counterattack Fortress Dragon to go with the Cyber Dragons. But yeah, that's the deck. That's Clown Bros, that's what we call it, which it just started off as a joke, and then we realized today, it's like, that's actually a really cool name. But if you want a more official name, it's either Clownblade Pendulum or like Performages. It's not really Performages and Performapels because there's 2 Performapels in it. So I'd say if the closest it has to official name is Performages. But we call it Clown Bros. And this is our first draft. It's probably going to change more as we play. And it's really fun. I don't know how strong it is competitive-wise. I would say that it has a shot at least at being decent. Could be super broken. I'm not sure about it. But I think it has potential. I think people should play around with it. And it's really fun. And then it'll eventually turn into M&M when we get Pendulum Sorcerer, which is very possible to be Breakers of Shadow, which would not surprise me at all. But, of course, I'm also going to switch to Magicians when that comes out. So, yeah. This video is long. Yeah. Sorry. If you got this far, cool. This is a cool deck. You should try it out. So, thanks for watching, YouTube. We'll see you next time. Deuces.